this week we're talking about Skinner and Bandura, who are both theorists who believed that personality behaviors are learned utilizing past experiences. However, their stances on what we might call free will is where we start really seeing a difference. So free will can be seen as an idea of having control over one's life. Obviously, there are circumstances outside of control. However, if one believes in free will, they understand that the choices that they make create their life rather than some form of destiny. This can be seen in the idea of locus of control. If one has an internal locus of control, they believe that the choices they make form the life that they have. Where if someone has an external locus of control, they will believe more that destiny, fate, or karma has more control over their lives than they do. Skinner was someone who we might say had an external locus of control because his behavioral theory says that the environment someone is in or was raised in has a massive effect on their personality and behaviors. Bandura, on the other hand, believes that people are goal-oriented and have specific intentions. Bandura's social cognitive theory and social learning theory actually separates learning from the actual behavior. This means that someone can learn without actually engaging in the behavior, also known as modeling or observational learning. So just by seeing someone else behave a certain way can actually affect how that person's going to behave in the future. This idea suggests that learning actually occurs from a cognitive process, and since learning and behavior are not inherently linked, someone may behave in a way that is discordant with their actual cognitive processes at that point in time. So while Skinner and his colleagues believe that all learning takes place in more of a conditional learning, Bandura disagrees and says that direct reinforcement cannot illustrate all types of learning. So Bandura attempts to use his research to reflect real-life situations and believes that people have control over their intellectual functioning and the cognitive aspects. The social aspect of this really comes from Bandura's belief that observational learning is what truly shapes our behavior. So Bandura's model actually would suggest that violent video games and other violent media in general would have an effect on the behavior of children and teenagers because they would have learned through observation to be aggressive. A paper that was published in Malaysia cited research suggesting that violent video games and movies can lead children to even kill people. Specifically, one incident that they discussed was, of course, the Columbine shooting in 1999. Both gunmen were known to have enjoyed violent video games and violent media, movies, and then they unfortunately, carried out a mass shooting spree at their school. But another study that they cited actually involved interviews with men who were serving different jail terms in prisons, and 68% had reported that observing similar behaviors of their role models growing up, which probably leads us to think that, those role models and that observation of their role models murdering, stealing, drug dealing, whatever, really is what put them in that position. They didn't necessarily it wasn't necessarily conditionally trained. It was all through observation. However, from Bandura's point of view, they definitely would have learned those behaviors from their role models, but their own goals would be what would lead them to commit crimes or mass murders, not purely just because they saw it in a video game. So Skinner was also a big believer in the unconscious, and that our environment can really affect how we behave. A theoretical article written by Murray Goddard compares the writings of B.F. Skinner and to some more contemporary and modern psychological research. So this was published in 2012, so it's not the most recent, but it's enough. So Goddard brings up the fact that in Skinner's writings in Beyond Freedom and Dignity, Skinner says that while people feel free, they need to re-examine with a scientific analysis because there's an unsuspected relationship between behavior and environment. This would imply that Skinner really did not believe in free will, because really our environment is affecting us at all times. Skinner actually warned about being careful with introspection because one doesn't actually have sensory nerves going to the brain that would make sure that we're actually accessing the correct parts. Skinner also warns about not being able to recognize conformity in oneself, while we are able to recognize it in others, which leads him to believe that an outside person would actually have a better idea of someone's intentions than the person themselves. So Skinner, with all of that, was also a big believer in mindfulness. And by mindfulness, what he means is training ourselves to focus and alter on the environment to support our own well-being. So this idea goes back to Skinner believing that the environment has much more of an effect on a person than their own thoughts or goals or intentions. His version of mindfulness literally altering your environment to be a place for success. So according to Goddard, it actually turns out that most of Skinner's work has actually held up pretty well through time and falls in line with a lot of the current research. I personally don't believe in true free will. And the reason why isn't because I'm highly religious. It comes from so it's not that I'm leaving it up to some sort of fate or destiny. And while I believe in things of a spiritual nature, that has nothing to do with my disagreement with free will. So my disagreement with free will actually comes from the idea that circumstances in which you were born into massively affects the outcome of your life. So as usual, my beliefs kind of fall in between the two theorists, because while I do believe that people can have goals and intentions and set out to change things for themselves, our environment and unconscious plays too heavy of a role to just run with a pull yourself up by the bootstraps attitude. I do believe you can do things to make your life better in a lot of ways, but that's mostly changing your environment. A popular quote I've heard a lot recently is, "You can't heal in the place that made you sick." Even my own therapist told me that the other day. Where I grew up has a very large drug problem. And so I find myself sometimes saying about other people, saying, well, yeah, they didn't stand a chance. Look at the family they were born into. They're all drug addicts. They didn't really stand a chance. And while I'm not saying someone can't come out of that adversity, I just know a lot of people that didn't, and it's just kind of like, well, yeah, they were born into that circumstance. They never even had a chance to make their life better. So I just don't believe that free will is as powerful as some might say it is. The other thing can also be mental health. Skinner talks about the unconscious. I'm someone who struggles with borderline personality disorder. I self-sabotage quite frequently. I've failed classes recently because of my own unconscious doing and sabotaging myself and not being able to get it together when I should have been able to. My goals and intentions were there. I tried, but there was so much going on inside that I wasn't able to actually accomplish what I needed to. I didn't even realize that I was doing this to myself until my therapist had pointed it out to me. And when I was diagnosed with borderline, they told me that's really common. And I couldn't even see it, that I was doing it to myself. Which really makes me kind of line more with Skinner with the unconscious, where your own brain, we don't have access to all those parts. And so that plays a huge role in what we can actually do. Sorry, going through my notes, there's a lot of them. So that's really just a long-winded explanation of why I don't believe in free will as like a true encompassing all statement. So even though I do believe that environment has a drastic impact on our ability to succeed in life, I also don't believe that video games trains everyone to be aggressive and kill people. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I also think it depends on when people are exposed to violent video games and media, and if they already have a predisposition to be violent. So, I actually think that video games have a lot to offer, including they have problem-solving skills, hand-eye coordination practice. It's a great form of entertainment, especially with COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of people have kind of turned back to playing more video games, myself included. I've started playing video games again. My husband plays a lot of video games, and my 6-year-old plays video games. We don't all play the same video games. Especially my son, who has aggressive tendencies already. I try not to foster that and instead encourage more creative games, or if I can sneak in educational type games, more of that. Where my husband plays a lot of Call of Duty, but he's a very mellow, even-tempered person. Very gentle to everybody. And so, he plays Call of Duty, won't let my son play Call of Duty because he's aggressive, and he's 6, it's not really age appropriate. But that's when you start desensitizing them to violence when they're so young, like I worry. So then, I like to play calming games like Animal Crossing because I am aggressive. My tendencies are very aggressive. And I've noticed when I play Call of Duty, I tend to stay aggressive for the rest of the night. I'm not saying I'm killing people or anything, but it's definitely, I'm more riled up and aggressive. I'm more willing to get into a fight with you because I had played Call of Duty earlier. So I really do apply a lot of Skinner's theories to my life already, especially the altering your environment to help you become a better person. Basically, I've tried to create workspaces to help foster my education and my job. My refrigerator, we've altered how we store vegetables because I'm trying to train my brain to see the vegetables and to cook with them instead of forgetting that they're there and letting them rot in the refrigerator. So, as far as Bandura's theories, the operant learning, something that I use in my personal life to make myself better is my therapist and I do a lot of modeling. She's modeled for me how to set boundaries. She's modeled for me different ways to ground yourself during a panic attack. And it's all been through modeling for her to show me what I should do because I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. And so she'll show me. Or I've even noticed sometimes she'll work in our sessions, especially like setting boundaries and stuff. She'll kind of she'll set a boundary and it shows me how I should set boundaries. And I model for my son all the time. If there's a behavior I don't like, I very blatantly try to show him the behavior I would rather see. And my husband and I try to model good communication for him. We try to model, what a healthy relationship looks like. So that way, as he's growing, he's learning through those observations. So thank you for making it this far into my video. I'm currently trying to figure out how to show you my references because I had to re-record this entire thing because we were having some technical issues. So I'm just going to put them in the discussion post and hope it works out. Thank you.